Welcome to Mind Meets Body and Soul, a podcast that connects the dots between clinical mental health and spiritual holistic wellness. I'm Heather, a licensed clinical social worker and mental health guru.
And I'm Devon, a Reiki master, spiritual teacher, and lover of all things woo-woo. We're here to discuss various wellness topics, highlighting the connection between the mind, body, and soul.
We'll be offering nuggets of wisdom from each of our fields with the ultimate goal of bridging the gap between our two worlds. Whether you lean more into cognitive psychology
or flow with the woo-woo waters, our intention is to help you prioritize yourself and unlock a fresh perspective to healing, growth, and expansion. We're so excited you're here. Let's jump in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 24 of Mind Meets Body and Soul. Heather here with my co-host Devon, who is in another new location.
Hi, Heather. Yes, I am. I'm in the third stay of my 6-week visit to Boulder, Colorado. So I'm currently house sitting for two very cute cats who, of course, moments before we hit record are in play mode. So if you hear some like scattering, if you hear some like balls rolling, we're just going to go with it. They're just making their guest appearance in the episode today.
Amazing. I love that. Torts is in the background sometimes drinking her water, or like they love to witch at the like exact moment we hit record.
Yeah. They just want to be a part of whatever it is that we're doing. Can't blame them.
That's true. It's rude of us to not include them. So welcome to them.
If one pops up on the couch here, I'll move out of the way so that they can, get their debut. But other than that, we'll be good.
Very, very fun. So what's happening, Devon? Any news or fun, exciting things to share on your end?
Yeah. Well, I have many stories to share in terms of what I've been experiencing. That will be for another episode. One thing I did want to share, I recently partnered with The Batch, which is a bachelorette party event planning service where, they have an app. They connect you with different practitioners, services for all things bachelorette party. And so I'm excited to announce that I will be bringing my bachelorette energy healing parties to multiple different major cities.
That is incredible and so fun. And like, what a cool thing to have at a bachelorette party. I could have used that a couple weeks ago when I was going down to my sister's. That's such a fun, like, healing experience to share on a bachelorette. Like it doesn't have to all just be like drinking and partying, but being able to like bond and connect with each other, I think is like a really, really cool thing. I love that.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. I've had multiple friends who have invited me or asked me to bring this Reiki healing meditation, all of that to their bachelorette. And it really does make such a difference because it breaks up all of the like go, 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 party stuff of every bachelorette weekend. And you're right, it does really connect people on a deeper level. So that's what I'm really excited to share. Thank you so much for asking. And along the lines of all things wedding, festivities, marriage, etc., I know that you just had your sister's wedding this past weekend. And
Yes.
We had mentioned maybe coming up with a story or a topic around the events of the weekend and around your experience of it. So how was the weekend for you?
The weekend was amazing. I feel similar to how we were talking about the like exhaustion of the Jersey Shore wellness retreat we did with Little Words Project. It's been a week today and I'm still tired in the best way though. Like it was just such a high, amazing weekend. My sister and her now husband looked beautiful. Like it was just so fun to be surrounded by our family and our friends, and just like the amount of love experienced in like a weekend is just incredible. And it was such a beautiful time, a beautiful venue, a beautiful couple. It couldn't have been more perfect. I'm so happy for them.
Well, congratulations to them. Everything looked beautiful. I saw some pictures that you posted, and yeah, those are those type of events, especially if you're like more personally involved, where you're going to have that like after event hangover for quite some time.
Yeah, the emotional hangover for sure was real in the best way though, like it was just perfect.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. And I put my Devon hat on because you are so incredible at always paying attention to things in life and little moments and bringing stories in to us that we can make episodes out of. So I had my Devon hat on all weekend trying to come up with like little moments or things that I could share and that we could make an episode out of. The best I could do is not at all because of the wedding, but just kind of like all that surrounds a wedding, I think culturally and societally for us. I came up with toxic positivity. And I feel like this doesn't sound so good to be like, let's talk about toxic positivity related to my sister's wedding, but like, it's really not about her or their wedding at all. It's kind of just like leading up to it. I was remembering my own wedding planning experience. And I think like people would go up to my sister and they were like, "Oh my gosh, are you so excited?" Or like, can you stand it? Can you believe that it's here? Or you must be thrilled." And I think those all those like leading questions make me think of toxic positivity because I think people want her to be excited. People want her to feel like people don't actually want to hear the truth. They kind of just like want to hear what they want to hear. And I think that's kind of why or where toxic positivity stems from. So that's the topic I'm bringing in today.
Mhm. Well, I'm celebrating you, first of all, for just being so present and being so aware of the whole experience and so, self reflective. And thank you for sharing that as well. I know that's kind of like not the topic that you would expect after we're talking about this fun, beautiful, love filled event. However, I can really see the tie in there. And like, especially as you were kind of seeing somebody else go through the process and reflecting on your own wedding. I haven't planned a wedding, but based on my observation and involvement with other friends' weddings, it can be a really stressful process. There can be some really stressful parts to it. Nerves are high, but you're so right that like when we think of weddings, these events, like we think of them as being these like purely positive, exciting experiences. And they are positive and exciting. They also are, can be stressful and also a lot of different feelings coming up for them. And the point that you made of like everybody kind of wanting or imposing their like positivity, I think it's important to note like most of these are very well intentioned. I can see your point here with like how that toxic positivity culture, and we'll definitely get into that this episode, like how even with the best of intentions, we can sometimes unintentionally push this positivity onto somebody, and it sometimes does more harm than good.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the whole thing with this like overly positive culture that we tend to have is like I understand very much that it is well intentioned, and I think like these people that are asking these questions of my sister, of anybody that's about to be planning a wedding, or just kind of like in any scenario, I do think they have the best intentions to try to like lift the spirits of this person or help them feel better or fix the problem.
Yep.
However, we both know as like healers and wellness professionals that like it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel stressed. It's okay to feel these things, and pushing positivity onto a person who isn't feeling that way is I think where this like toxicity or like the toxic positivity title comes from.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's dive in. Toxic positivity, wheels are spinning for me. There's another term that we like to use in the spiritual world as well. So, toxic positivity from the therapist standpoint, I know actually we have touched on this in a prior episode, but just as a refresher, if you wouldn't mind getting into it from your perspective, that would be great.
Yeah. I think toxic positivity is I think the title came from the fact that like we're overly pushing our own agenda or our own like feelings or what we want onto another person, which is where I think it gets or it becomes toxic because it's like this discrepancy between what someone's feeling and what I'm trying to kind of like push onto them. Like, oh no, no, like it's okay, it's okay. It's like it's not a big deal, or like yes, this horrible, tragic thing happened, but you have so much to be grateful for. And it's like, well, I'm not in that grateful space. I'm in this sad space or this frustrated space, and it's discrediting that person's experience. So I think it's this discrepancy between where I'm feeling and what someone is trying to push onto me or encourage me to feel or remind me. Again, they have the best intentions, that person, but they're missing the mark. They're like they're not hitting the target.
Yeah. And you know what? That makes me think of a former episode where you were talking about this experience that you were having with your husband, where you were in
Mm.
a, I don't know, having a moment, emotional moment. And naturally, as any partner, friend, anybody would want to do, like they kind of go into like solution mode, like, oh, okay, well, let me help, let me fix. And you know, that is part of that, like, I don't know what he was saying to you, but that is part of like that, like overtly like positive approach to it, where like sometimes all you want to do is just be in that sadness and like just receive that support. So I'm with you there. There's definitely like a fine line between like supporting somebody and like helping them stay optimistic versus like unintentionally pushing positivity on somebody who's not really ready or wanting or willing to even be there in the moment.
Mhm. Yeah, it's exactly that. We're just not I just don't think we're ready, and it's fair that we're not ready, and it's fair that our support person wants us to be happy. Both are true, different, that's all.
It's interesting that you bring this topic up because I actually recently came across a reel that really made me think about, this exact topic. And it was something along the lines of how like toxic positivity isn't actually a thing, or it isn't like the right term or name for it, because
Mhm.
positivity is not toxic. So you can't really put those two words together because they're just like, you know, it doesn't really make sense. So maybe I've thought about this. I was like, maybe the right wording, like, okay, toxic positivity is like a tagline or like a, hot topic of this wellness society. However, I like to think that what it really is like maybe it's a little bit of like avoidance tendencies, because we're avoiding what's actually, true, or what is actually reality, and trying to mask it or put something on top of it, or, put something over it. And that really is more along the lines of like an avoidance.
It's totally an avoidance. 2 weeks ago, we talked about like emotions and how they're energy in motion and we just have to feel them. And I think the thing is that emotions are not only uncomfortable for us as the person experiencing them, but they're incredibly uncomfortable for someone who loves us or a support person who's trying to show up for us and they don't know what to do with our uncomfortable feelings. They don't want to see us struggle or suffer. So I think it's totally the support person trying to avoid the actual problem or issue or emotion and fix it by like reminding us like, hey, wait, there's so much that you have to be grateful for, or wait, like remember all the good stuff too. Like I totally think it's their intention, or I totally think it's them accidentally avoiding the actual way to solve that problem for us.
Yeah. I think that this topic will like get a lot of people thinking. And sometimes I think it might be hard to hear like that your good intentions can actually be an avoidance,
Mhm.
tendency. And so again, I really want to remind those that are listening that like we recognize the intention behind the action, and like there's nothing wrong with wanting to uplift somebody else, with wanting to remind them of like all the positive things that there are. This is more or less an invitation to like consider that like maybe somebody is in a low place, or, feeling their feels, and that's okay. Just as we encourage people to give themselves permission to feel the feels, like give other people permission to also feel their feels and to be where they are.
Yeah, my intention with this topic is to encourage or invite our listeners to just pause and consider the impact of what it is that they're about to say. So, is this going to land well with this person? Are they in this space where they can handle or hear what I have to offer, or should I just show up Brene Brown has this incredible video on empathy versus sympathy and how we can just, like, all we really have to do in a moment where someone is feeling something is just show up for them, hear them. And that's hard for us because the human side of us, I think, wants to fix it, wants to make it better. But all we have to do is sit down with that person and say, wow, that sounds so hard.
Mm.
I can't imagine what that must feel like for you. Tell me more. Like, inviting those types of responses rather than trying to slap a band aid on it can be so much more powerful.
And that reminds me of the practice of like meeting people where they are. Before you assume or before you judge somebody, like whatever it is that they may be thinking or feeling, simply asking somebody like, how are you doing? Like, you have this wedding coming up, you have this event coming up, you have this job interview coming up, as opposed to starting off with like, oh my gosh, you must be so nervous, you must be so happy. Instead of imposing that judgment on them, maybe just asking them like, how are you doing? And then that gives them the space to say, oh, I'm so excited, or I'm so stressed right now. And then that gives you like the signal, like, okay, now I know where to meet them. Because if they're saying that they're so happy and they're so excited, then you can match their vibration. Like, you can match their happiness, their excitement. Just be like, I'm so excited for you. As opposed to if somebody is like, I'm so stressed right now, like I'm really worried about how this is going to go, then you match them and meet them where they are, as opposed to them coming to you from, this level, and you're trying to, you know, meet them at a level that they're not at, or try to get them at a level that they're just not at.
Hmm. Yeah, very much so. So, wait, I want to also come back to, though, like, in the spiritual world, because I don't want to get too into like tools, because that now I'm thinking, like, well, how would I help someone experiencing this? So, before we jump that direction, what does this look like in the spiritual energetics world? Kind of like you're saying, like matching somebody's energy. I know you said there's also a spiritual term for this.
Yeah, there's a term called spiritual bypassing, which reminds me a lot of the label or the term of toxic positivity. And spiritual bypassing is a way of like hiding behind spiritual practices or spiritual beliefs. It's the same exact thing where we're like really not paying attention or giving space to the ways that we're actually feeling, and yet just covering it with a spiritual belief like, oh, this just wasn't meant for me anyway. I'm totally fine. Wasn't meant for me. Moving on. Or like, I'm love and light. I exude love and light. And that's all I am, love and light. And like, again, well intentioned. It's great to believe, to feel supported by higher forces, to connect with, divine sources of divinity, and to also know that, at your core, you are a loving light being. However, that doesn't mean that that's all that you are. And that doesn't mean that like your life choices and stuff are like completely out of your hands, which I know resonates with you there, is like that feeling like that lack of autonomy in the spiritual world.
Hmm.
And so spiritual bypassing can be just as harmful as this toxic positivity, because we're not recognizing the reality, or we're not recognizing like the root of something, and instead just putting a band-aid, a mask over something, and concealing it.
Hmm. I don't know if I'm like ready to get rid of the term toxic positivity. I wonder if maybe we can spend some time trying to come up with like a new term, because I was just looking up while you were talking the definition of the word toxic. And it says poisonous, very harmful or unpleasant in a pervasive or insidious way. So, no, these people who are offering this toxic positivity are not insidious or are not poisonous people at all. But I think their effort, or I do think that it's harmful and pervasive of them to push this positivity onto a person who's not feeling it. So, spiritual bypassing, toxic positivity, like, elaborate more, Devin. Like, what else? What are some synonyms, or what else might you come up with for this concept?
Spiritual bypassing does seem to be like a pretty, I think, like a fairly appropriate term for it. The word toxic, like we have been so quick to label things toxic. Like we've heard toxic masculinity, then toxic positivity. It's like, why are we labeling things with a word that has like such a negative connotation to it, because again, it's well intentioned. It's not like it's coming from like a malicious place. So I would think of like maybe substituting the word toxic with something like, I don't know, over exaggerated positivity or like unrealistic positivity.
Yeah.
Any synonyms coming to you?
Not yet. I'm going to keep thinking on it too, but this is also making me think of like the concept of radical acceptance. And like, I remember telling Nick about it, and he was like, well, why does it have to be radical? And like this too, like, why does it have to be toxic? And I think we just come up with these like extreme words as a way to prove a point here. Like, okay, so all of these people are doing this overly unrealistic positive thing. So if we just call it something like toxic positivity, or this acceptance has to be full acceptance, so let's call it radical. I think that really highlights the difference between like positive and toxic positivity, or acceptance and radical acceptance. I think we're really just trying to highlight the discrepancy or the difference. So I do kind of think of like unrealistic positivity, or almost like mismatched positivity. You're just like, it's just well intentioned, but it's not hitting the point positivity. Like it's just not working. It's like overly, maybe overly is the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I like the way that you put that because it's almost like you put the big keyword in there and it's like, well, now that I have your attention, let me like help people understand what that is. So I like
Yeah.
that mismatched
Yeah.
positivity. There was another one there, like four. Let's get into this. And it makes sense. It's almost like a marketing strategy, right? Like, let's use a big word that draws people in, that, catches their attention. I mean, we've mentioned this before in previous episodes, that whole like good vibes only. That kind of irks me because it's not only, it's also like there are no, we've talked about like vibes, vibrations not being good or bad per se, but I feel like it does kind of serve our more like ego extreme. If we start on one end of the spectrum where we're like, bad things always happen, to sometimes on the very opposite extreme, good vibes only. And hopefully we find ourselves somewhere in the middle, both on the personal level and like the societal level.
I use the analogy of a pendulum a lot in therapy with my clients, in that like oftentimes the pendulum is stuck on one side. So everything is awful, bad things are happening to me. And I do think when we're starting to change, if this pendulum is stuck, it does tend sometimes to swing to the opposite end, where then we're in the good vibes only and everything is going well. Ideally, though, that our work isn't done yet when the pendulum swings to the other side. We want to get this pendulum back so that the average is in that middle and we're swinging back and forth from both sides, because we don't want too much of one or the other.
I think that's really helpful. You have used that before, and I really like it each time you do use it. So then what does that look like when working with your clients?
There's a lot of things, and I'll try to keep it short. I think that this is a two-way, like this work comes from two angles. One, in being the receiver of this overly positive support, where I'll tell them like there's one answer of, if someone approaches you with these types of leading questions or this overly positive toxic positivity space, you can be as honest as like, yeah, I am excited. And I'm also like pretty stressed. And like, there's a lot of stuff that I have to get done before this wedding. And you can be like very honest in that moment. If you're not willing or able to do so, checking in with yourself and knowing like, okay, this person might be well intentioned. That's not how I'm feeling. And that's okay. And then you show up for yourself and validate yourself in that way. So that's like on the receiving end, what it might look like. But two, I'm also telling these people, if you're experiencing this, you want to be mindful of your support that you're offering to other people too. So maybe to these people, you model asking open-ended questions instead of asking leading questions. So, hey, how's it going? Or you offer like, I can imagine what this is like for you, but like, tell me how you're feeling or what's going on for you. And offering that type of support to model that for other people too.
both great suggestions. Thank you.
How about for you?
I think thinking about this whole like spiritual bypassing thing, like the biggest thing that I see on social media is that, many people talking about like how to manifest and how to trust and surrender and how to let go of your desires and let go of your expectations and let the universe take care of it, and how to be more loving and light filled and how to show up. And like, I really appreciate, and I try to do this myself, I really appreciate the people, the accounts, the businesses that also demonstrate or show or speak to the harder parts, the more challenging parts of, this spiritual journey that we're on. And that sometimes I'm not all love and light. Sometimes I'm like really pissed off. And sometimes I'm like really frustrated. And sometimes I don't feel like, you know, exuding love and light. And I think it's just like normalizing that spectrum that we're going to be all the things, sometimes all at once, sometimes one, at a time. But I think the best thing that we can do is be authentic with our feelings, with our thoughts. It's really not much different than the suggestions that you just made, but it's, in the spiritual sense, it's recognizing that spirituality isn't just about highlighting the seemingly positive, light filled experience in life. It's highlighting all of the things, the spectrum of experiences that we have, and like reminding us of the beauty and the pain of living this human life.
Yeah. I know it's also an overly used cliche thing to say, but if nothing else comes through in this episode, I hope that our listeners know that like we are here telling you, even if people are pushing a positive agenda on you, we are here to tell you that like it's okay to not be okay. And that's part of your human experience. And we all go through it and we all deal with it. And that's actually the normal. And that's actually the common, typical experience. Like you said, Devon, to experience the full spectrum, the full range of emotions day to day, like week to week, it changes. And that's okay. You're not going to live in that negative space either, but it's okay to be there and it's okay to feel that, even if you don't feel necessarily supported in those moments.
Sound advice. I couldn't agree more with you. And I think that might have just wrapped up our episode perfectly.
I know we're getting pretty good at this.
We are getting good at this, and I give you so much credit. I thank you for, your storytelling leading to a great episode topic here. So thank you.
Thanks for modeling that for me and for allowing me the space to do some storytelling.
Happy to do so.
So I know you're in a new space. I'm not sure if you have your vision board with you, but is there anything in the space that you're in or that's stood out to you in this experience, this wild, exciting, crazy experience that you've been on that's calling out to you or that you want to share to end our episode today?
I didn't bring my vision board with me, unfortunately, so we're going to have to hold off on that for the time being. But with this conversation we're having, it makes me think of this experience that I'm having out here in Boulder right now. And of course, like I'm in this place that I love, that I know I'm moving to. I'm really happy to be here and it feels all so aligned. Doesn't mean that there haven't also been challenges and there hasn't been like, I've faced some rejection, I've faced some resistance. I've had moments of like, I don't really know what I'm doing out here. And like, I'm kind of like a little nervous and a little scared. And so I just want to normalize that all of that's okay. And that in an effort to, model what the opposite of like toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing looks like, I'm experiencing all the things. And sometimes it's great, sometimes it's hard, but it just is.
It just is. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for our listeners to hear. I think it's important for us to always be modeling this, for, this to be something that we're working on incorporating more. So it is how it is.
It is how it is. You know what? Our animals didn't, they settled down. So I guess they didn't really want to make their their appearances in this episode.
They got shy.
They got shy. Well, anyway, with that, with this topic, we wrap up another great episode. Thank you, Heather, for coming up. Always a pleasure to have these conversations with you. And I'm already looking forward to next week.
Right back at ya. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. We are so glad that you took the time to share this space with us. We'll be releasing new episodes of Mind Meets Body and Soul every Tuesday, so be sure to give us a follow and share this podcast with those you love.
To connect with us and join our communities, head to the show notes where you'll find our contact information and individual websites. Until next week, stay grounded, keep growing, and trust that everything you seek is unfolding for you.